welcome to our channel, Swirl Through the World here. If you like our content, be sure to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know when our next video comes out. So this week we're going to be talking about privilege. Privilege, yes.
What's that?
There's a lot to unpack there, but when I say privilege, I know people are going to be out there saying it. Privilege is a thing. And you can't say, oh, well, I was poor, so I didn't have any privilege, or I didn't have the greatest life. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that your privilege stems from you being a white person and you are automatically at a better position than black people. Point blank, period. That's what that means.
Yeah, I didn't understand that for a really long time. I thought that because I grew up poor, that I wasn't privileged, which is not the case, because someone that's black, that's poor, with the same, I guess, does not have the same opportunities I have. And that was an interesting one. Another one is that I feel entitled to everything. I mean, part of that may be human nature, but I mean, definitely part of that's this privileged mentality of where I should get mine first or ahead of someone else. So these are things that we've had to
discuss. And it's things that he wasn't even aware of. And I think that's part of being in an interracial relationship. There's a lot of things that are brought to the forefront, like with implicit biases and privilege, because you just don't know what you don't know. So my black experience is not familiar to him. He's not black.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I want to say that ideally, not unfortunately, maybe it's the wrong word, but ideally, like, I should have been aware of those dynamics so she wouldn't have to bring up, this idea of privilege to make me understand. Like, that's really, I think, part of the problem in a bigger picture, the fact that the minority has to address the white group of people with the issue that's at hand, when the white group of people should take the initiative to understand what is really going on, and so they can start making that change. And I'm not proud to say that we had to have these conversations. She had to initiate them, and that's kind of made me more aware. I'm not saying that's ideal at all, and that's a fault of mine, I guess. But again, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to understand unless you have somebody black in your life that you care about, and not just, I have a black friend, my gardener's black. It's not the same. You have to have somebody that you care about, you have a true vested interest in, to really see these things. And you need to, like, wake up and just understand that humanity in another person, which I feel like is very beyond a lot of people, which hopefully will change just from experiences.
Yeah, I mean, part of, when I think that, like, the idea of white people having more privilege, I think a lot of the problem is, the underlying problem, the bigger problem, I think, is that it makes white people feel like they're getting put on the back burner, and that they're not getting theirs. And there's, like, fear element that kicks in. And there's, like, if you don't have someone close to you that can break that experience down, like, you instantly gravitate towards that idea of, I'm going to lose something.
Scarcity.
The scarcity effect. And, I have no problem. I'm not embarrassed to be white. I don't have a problem being white, but I also understand that throughout history, like, white people have done things to create a system in their favor, and I feel like it's not our turn. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to give someone else the time to be on stage. Like, it doesn't have to be us, and there's enough for everyone to go around. And, like, that mentality of, like, I'm not going to get mine is ridiculous, and it's okay for me to be who I am, but also say, hey, it's not my turn. Let's give them the turn that they deserve, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So this has been a process, but it's like a good breaking down.
That's how it was. That's the first conversation we had. That's how I broke it down to you.
This fool, the lies that we tell. But I think a big part of breaking it down was being clear on what my lived experience as a black person has been, and the expectations of me from childhood of what people saw or projected. Like, even going back to school, people expected that I was uneducated, that I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know what I was talking about. So I was always taught, like, you had to be twice as good, because the expectation is just there that you're nothing, basically.
It ties a little bit to myself, and, like, I'm okay with trying to just cut corners or break rules, and because the expectation of, I'm ignorant, I'm poor, I don't know XYZ, and like the instant, like, viewing myself in that light like doesn't exist for me. So it's okay for me to do all these things that go against nature or breaking the rules, which we talked about in the first video.
Yeah.
But
and I think that's clearly probably where it stems from, where I don't want to break the rules because I am judged under a harsher lens than you would ever be.
And it's not just you
the
being
scrutiny
judged,
is already there.
It's all black people
Exactly.
in America being judged when you do something that's out of
Yes,
nature.
I think a lot of black people that if you're watching this, you can relate that a lot of people try and make you the spokesperson for the whole black community. Like you do something, they're like, well, every black person must do that, which is obviously not the case. Everybody is their own person, but people cannot separate those things.
It's funny, it doesn't happen in inverse. If one white guy does something, doesn't mean every white person does that. But it does happen for you guys, which is kind of
yeah. I mean,
ridiculous.
Maybe between black people, there are some things that we're like, that's some white people-ish. There are a lot of those things, so we're not even going to sit here and lie. I don't use washcloths. But there are...
She's got me saying that now.
But it's true. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But like...
White people don't use washcloths.
Why?
I don't know.
Like, somebody let me know. Like, I have this question all the time. Like, I really need to know.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a conversation that, you know.
This is foolish. Okay, but yes. So this conversation is continuous. Like, there's always something that can be learned. There's always something that can be discussed. And just like seeing the progress is interesting because one example recently happened where we had an issue that was surrounded by privilege and implicit bias. We were at Starbucks.
Yeah, so we were in a Starbucks. It was still kind of the height of COVID, so they had the quote-unquote social distancing. And we placed an order. Did we place it on the phone? Doesn't matter. We placed it on the phone. We were in line to get our order. And I was standing in line, and she was like, it's a bunch of white people that are on top of each other, and nobody's following the rules. And she's like, I'm not going to stand in this crowded line. I'm going to stand in this corner and wait for the order. So I had some stuff in my hand. I walked over. I gave it to hold. You know, so clearly visible. There's an interaction between myself and her. And you know how they were closing off Starbucks.
Yeah, they were closing off like the seating area or like the little bar area where you could set your drinks, but the tables are all gone and everything. So I'm just waiting over there because I don't want to cluster where all the COVID is, like where everybody's just standing. So I'm like, okay, I'll stay back until our order is ready. Then I'll go to the counter because, you know, people love to huddle at that counter as well.
That's a whole nother conversation.
So I was like, let me stay back. And then the barista steps out of taking orders and comes to me and says, oh, there's no loitering here.
Which is crazy because like she wasn't loitering, she was waiting for the order.
Yeah. So I respond and I let him know. I'm like, oh no, I'm a paying customer. I'm just waiting for my beverages. They're not prepared yet. So I'm waiting. And he was like, oh, well, this area is closed. You can't wait here. And I'm like, clearly I'm not sitting. I don't have my food yet, so I'm not eating anything here. So I was like, oh, okay. So where should I wait? This man really looked at the door and back at me. Mind you, it's December. So I said, where should I wait? And he goes, and I said, are you telling me to wait outside? And he goes, yeah.
See, I had no idea what was going on at the time. I just saw her, they were having a conversation. I saw her walk outside. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna get my drinks. And I still didn't really know what was going on, and I don't remember what she ordered. So I grabbed my drink, I walked out, I'm like, hey, you wanna go get your drink? And she had like this look on her face, and she told me what happened. I was like, what? Like, so just to roll it back, like 2 years ago, I wouldn't have really understand the depth of the situation, because if she goes and tells them like, hey, you're being a dick, like you're basically having like this, you're instantly looking at me as a black person, assuming I'm loitering, that I'm not supposed to be there, and like it's just wrong. And she goes in and does that, right away she's the loud black person.
Yes,
that
because you have to also understand that in this instance, everybody else in the store is white. So then already when he comes over and talks to me, there's already attention on me. Everybody has turned and is looking at me as if I'm causing a problem. Mind you, I'm a paying customer. So I'm just like, okay, in this instance, I just have to leave. Like, I can't win in this situation because he's being argumentative with me. I have to diffuse the situation because if I get loud, who knows what could happen. So then he comes and then I come back in and he's having words with the guy about...
Well, so I hear from her what happened. I'm like, wait, that is not okay. Like, really? You're going to single her out? We didn't even mention the fact that there were other people, quote unquote, loitering, other white people.
Actually eating in the area. A
Quote,
white
unquote.
man had
It's
just gotten all his
ridiculous.
stuff and sat in the area where it was closed, where I couldn't be loitering, even though I wasn't loitering, said nothing to him. He's having a full conversation, eating his muffin, drinking his coffee, chilling. But I was the problem. So then he's telling him the issue with this. And then the man says, well, I didn't know she was with you. If she had just stood with you in line, it would have been fine.
So she's taking precaution by saying there's a lot of people in line, let me step away.
And he's basically telling me that I need to be with my white chaperone.
And which, I was so mad, like my hands were shaking. I have a problem. I get emotional. I have some emotions sometimes. And when I get emotional, I get it's hard for me to control what I say, but I actually made it a point to be very vocal about this is wrong, the way you treated her was wrong, and you can clearly see what you're doing. And I try to just explain to him what the dynamic, even if you thought you were being Mr. I'm going to protect everybody from COVID by telling someone extra to stand in line, which makes no sense. I was just trying to break it down to the guy, this is not okay for you to do that. It's not okay for you to single out the one black person standing away from other people, trying to be safe, who is waiting for an order for you to go nah, you gotta wait outside. But the white guy over there, chewing away, doing his thing, it's
He's
cool.
fine.
He can just sit there. It's just
as if my money isn't the same as everybody else's in here.
And I tried to instead of I'm pretty sure I didn't curse. I'm pretty sure I didn't become aggressive. This other barista tried to come over he's gonna be Superman and save the day and whatever. But I was pretty adamant about what I was saying. But I was also trying to make sure I'm not gonna come across as ignorant, essentially, because I wanted to just make my point to him, hey, maybe the next time when he sees it, when he's about to do the same thing, he'd be well, that was kind of not the right thing for me. I don't know if that really came across, but that was the idea. And that was a situation where I think it was time for me to step up and say something, because again, if she would have done it, she would have been this, I knew it, she's black, she's loud, she's causing a scene.
I was warranted in my actions in the beginning by telling her to leave. And so, yeah. I mean, it sucks, but I think black people can identify with that. There are certain places and spaces where we cannot speak up and do that because people will feel threatened because you are being aggressive, which is not the case. So we had that whole interaction. He tries to say, he's like, well, did you feel like it was racist? That's what he
wouldn't
says
ask
to me.
He wouldn't. He was done with me, so he was asking her.
And I said, clearly, you think it's okay that this white man, he can stand in that area where I was standing, not bothering anybody, not doing anything but waiting for the food and drinks that I paid for. And I needed to leave, but he didn't. And he couldn't even answer me when I was like, what was the difference? Why did I have to go stand outside like I'm some animal or a common criminal?
He's trying to backpedal and saying COVID cases have been spiking. And it's that doesn't even make sense, dude, because you got people packed in this line, one on top of the other. Everyone's white. I don't know if this is over the top, but I felt, because everybody, when I started talking, it was right on the end and the whole line was there. So everybody's staring at me now and her having this conversation. But if we bring this whole situation back to the idea of privilege, is that 2 years ago, even a year ago, I wouldn't have fully understood the severity of the situation because I wouldn't have any idea of what that experience would be like, right? If someone tells me to go outside, I'm it's not.
They're telling you just because.
Yeah, it's not the same implication. It doesn't have the same underlying racism to it. And I think the awareness of it came from conversations we've had, which is why I think it's so important that people have these conversations so that
they understand
white people
and
understand.
Use their privilege properly. Yes. In this instance, he was able to use it to be a voice for me where I couldn't. Whereas previously that wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have seen it as an issue or not his problem.
And I think in reality, it's an uncomfortable conversation. And my people are very good at being uncomfortable. But it's just an uncomfortable conversation. There's no easy way to have it, but I think it's super important to have it. It's super important to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I think that's what's going to make a change, a bigger change, because again, it goes back to black people have been dealing with this since they came to this country. What was that, 400 years ago? right? It's not like it just kind of like, it's like a recent thing. You know, I think I said in the last video, like given the recent events, it's not really a recent thing. It's been going on forever. And it's like the only people that stand up for black people is other black people trying to, you know, adapt what they're trying to say so that white people will listen, which is also ridiculous. And there's like no white people really stepping up to I mean, there's a lot of people doing things, but it's not enough, and it's not happening at a broader scale. And so I think that's what we think.
These conversations
It's super important to have these. You have to have these conversations. And like there was a recent incident in the tech world where someone banned, you know, talking about societal and political issues within the company, and I can understand how, you know, too much politics can cause disruption at work, and it can go in all kinds of directions. But the bottom line is, when you start banning that from your workplace, you're banning the conversation that needs to happen. And yes, the conversation is uncomfortable. Like if you're running a company, you're going to have people abusing situations, people abusing benefits. You're gonna have people taking conversations too far, regardless if they're about race or about politics or whatever. You're always gonna have these hard balances to have to draw between what is acceptable, what's not within the company. But like it needs to be acceptable that societal issues, especially the ones going on, not the ones going on today, but the ones at the forefront today, because they've always been going on, that they get talked about, so these conversations are had, so that like it starts breaking this like blindness to this privilege that exists.
Yes, because also societal issues can be independent of politics. Humanity is not the same as politics. So that's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
It's unfortunate, really. And again, the person running this company is white, and it's his privilege to be able to say, don't want to talk about societal issues.
I don't want to be bothered with it because it's not his experience.
You know, in 2016, I didn't vote because I didn't want to vote for either candidate, and that was my privilege, right? Because like it's going to affect me maybe a little bit, maybe not, but I'm not a black person living in America, right? And in a recent election, I didn't have a choice. Like, I mean, I did have a choice. I did have the privilege, if I wanted to say I'm not going to vote because I don't like either candidate. But, you know, there's a point where I need to make a stand for what's right and what's wrong. And where I don't just sit back on my privilege and say, okay, I'm just not going to do anything, because I can still kind of cruise along and it's kind of set up in my favor anyhow. And that needs to stop. And I think it takes individual one-on-one conversations, I guess, on like the grassroots level. And, you know, like I said in the beginning, like, unfortunately, you know, it's like I'm not proud of the fact that I've become more aware because I have someone I really care about that's like, no, we're going to have these conversations. You know, maybe when we have these conversations, share them with you guys, that, you know,
you can also open the conversation up to the people in your circle.
Yeah, or maybe someone can identify with me and be like, oh, this guy has some things to say that kind of makes sense. Let me dig into that some more. Yeah. So that's the scoop.
That's the scoop. That's the broad scoop of privilege. If you guys want to let us know in the comments about your experiences with privilege, how you deal with privilege with your partner, how you discuss it, how you tackle it, we'd love to hear it.
Definitely love to hear it. And I think we're going to drop a link to our site.
Yes.
So each video, we're also going to put out a post, mostly written by the Krystina. And yeah, so if you guys want to check that out too, that's cool.
Yeah. All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.